Welcome to Connect to Joy. Your host, Carol DeChaine, is an intuitive spiritual guide for practical matters and Marconic multidimensional energy practitioner. Her quest is to help you realize new possibilities, discover and release what holds you back, and enable you to manifest an inspired life filled with joy. Join us on this journey of transformation. Now, here's your host, Carol DeChaine.
Welcome, beautiful spirits. Thank you for joining me here today. I'm Carol DeChaine, and my passion in life is to help you find your joy, to release what holds you back, and assist you to quantum leap your journey of self-discovery. I'm an intuitive, certified in life and business coaching, and a Marconic multidimensional energy practitioner and teacher. So if you're ready to start creating that life you've only dreamed of, that you deserve, let's have some fun, and let's get started right now. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about abusive brain chatter with my guest, Jacquie Elliott. So, what is abusive brain chatter, you might be asking? And how do you know if you're doing it to yourself? How does it hold you back from having what you want in life? And lastly, and the most importantly probably, how do you make it stop? We're going to be answering all those questions. But before we go any further, let me introduce my guest, Jacquie Elliott. Jacquie Elliott is a certified life, spiritual, and relationship coach, helping people change their abusive brain chatter and find their source of love and power to heal within. She is a frequent guest on radio shows and podcasts and is a motivational speaker. She is writing a book on abusive brain chatter and is putting together a TED Talk on the subject. And she leads a variety of workshops and spiritual retreats. More can be found on her website at JacquieElliottCLC.com, which will be in the episode notes, so you spell it right. And she also has a special offer for you, and we'll tell you more about that towards the end of the show. Welcome, Jacquie.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here, Carol.
Well, let's jump right in. So that we're all on the same page, what definition would you give to brain chatter? And besides that, when you get to abusive brain chatter, what's the difference between those two things?
Okay. Well, brain chatter, one of the things they found is that people, I think they found that during our thoughts, we have between 12,000 and 60,000 negative thoughts a day.
Yes.
Hard to believe, isn't it something? So abusive brain chatter is more like emotional abuse. And this is the message that I really want to get out there. We all have chatter. Oh, I should be doing this. Maybe I should pick up the kids. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Abusive brain chatter fits the criteria of emotional abuse. So that would be belittling, fat shaming, criticizing your looks, gaslighting, isolating you. It's the chatter in your head that holds you back. It's the chatter in your head that is really a bully. I call it the bully inside of you. And it stops you from doing what you want to do. And so many of us just take it for granted. It's okay to say, oh God, I look so terrible. I'm so fat, or especially on Zoom, or when we look at our faces, or as we get older, it's saying, oh my God, I just look so terrible. But really, if you realize that you're emotionally abusing yourself, you're not going to want to do that. That's just not kind and loving language that nurtures our soul.
So don't say something like, oh, that was stupid. I've done that before. And I go, no, that wasn't the smartest thing I've ever done. That's a little kinder, but I don't know if that's still slightly abusive or not.
Right. Yes. And for me, it went beyond that. My abusive brain chatter was so mean and vicious, and it would keep me, it would say things like, you're a terrible mother. You're never going to meet anyone. You're never going to earn any money. You should never try. I mean, it literally crippled me. And that's why I got interested in the subject, because it is the kind of thing that can cripple you. And it comes out of the blue.
So that was my next question was, how did you get interested in the topic? Did you hear about someone talking, or how did that happen?
Well, my own story, as I said, I used to suffer from abusive brain chatter, and then I just made a decision one day not to do it. But, I also had a mother who was suicidal. And one of the things that she said years later when I asked her, why would you commit suicide with children in the house? Why would you try to do that? And she said, I believed that you would be better off without me. So I really realized that my mother that her brain chatter was telling her that her children would be better off without her. That was pretty bad. That was the repercussions of abusive brain chatter can be really, really awful. And suicide included. So as I started my coaching practice and my spiritual coaching practice, I would give my clients the space to let their chatter start talking. We would spend a session with just, okay, let's hear it. Let's hear what it has to say. And the things that would come up would just be painful, even for me to hear, the mean things and the tone in which sometimes our brain talks to us. So then I decided, people really have to start equating this with emotional abuse. Because if somebody were emotionally abusing you, it would be very easy for people to say, oh, you need to leave that. You need to leave that abuser. The way Joe talks to you at a party, you need to leave him. But we don't say that about ourselves because we can't leave ourselves, right?
Well, and nobody hears us talking if it's brain chatter. We're not saying it out loud most of the time, unless you live alone like me. Then sometimes I say things out loud. But generally, if people don't hear it, they can't even say that to you to help you. It's like, don't be so mean to yourself. Although I'm sure that sometimes people that are really nasty themselves do say it out loud too. People do hear it.
Yes. And yes, people do that. But you're right. A lot of times people don't do it. The way you may notice it is, like I said, they may get into addictions. They may isolate at home because their abusive brain chatter is so loud that it's telling them that they're having to shove food or alcohol to quiet it. And so to me, that's always a clue that they have some abusive brain chatter going on. And the other thing that's really interesting, Carol, is I call it the tornado head. I don't know if you have this with your clients, but when a client comes in and they start talking, and I notice this after a few sessions, they'll start talking about something and they'll say, oh God, I had the worst week. I lost my credit card. And then, oh my God, things like that always happen to me. It's such a bad week. And then at work and then blah, blah, blah. And they end up with, that's because my mother never did and they end up talking about, and my grandmother. And it's just like, wow, how did we get from you losing a credit card to you're such a loser and you're never, you're never going to go anywhere, and you'd be surprised how many people do that little spiral, I call it the tornado head. Yeah. They just picking up as they go.
I hadn't thought of it that way. It's a really cute word, but yeah, I've heard that as well. And it's really interesting because I hadn't really thought about it. But when you said your mother was suicidal, my mother told us at one point when I was older that she almost committed suicide. And I was like, what? But she had postpartum. And it was before postpartum was, I don't want to say popular, but was known about. Mm-hmm. And she said, I was in the car and I was going to drive into a tree, drive off a bridge. I was ready to do it because I figured you'd all be better off without me. I was a horrible mother. I wasn't going to do this. And then I realized your dad needed the car, so I couldn't do that. And I went, well, thank God. That was a stupid reason, but yay. Whatever. Obviously, you didn't really want to kill yourself, but wow. Okay. But knew nothing about that until I was older.
Yes.
After I was born, not my sister. So it was after me. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. She goes, well, it wasn't your fault, but it was postpartum depression.
And postpartum depression can lead to that abusive brain chatter. And it's like, oh, okay. So, I came up with a way for people to just kind of remember and, kind of change that chatter. That's what my TED Talk is about. And that's kind of my work right now with my clients.
Before we get into that, is there a way, or maybe this is going to explain it, to become more aware of what your brain is chattering about? Because most of us just go along, dum-da-dum-da-dum, and it's just norm for us. We don't really hear what we're saying to ourselves. So is that part of the ABCs that you're talking about, or is this just a different question?
Exactly, Carol. That's exactly it. A is aware. And that's the first step, is to be aware of how you're talking to yourself. I just suggest to people, for the week, just be aware. You might even just write it down and let it go and think about what you're saying to yourself. Wow, I didn't realize I said that to myself. I don't realize I talk that way to myself, but you have to be aware of how you are talking to yourself and the words that you're saying to yourself. So that's the first step, is really awareness. And once you kind of know that the words you're saying are their emotional abuse, then you become even more aware that it's not something in your best interest. So yes, aware is absolutely the first step.
Did you want to go ahead then and skip to the B's and C's? Because I know everybody wants to know what those are.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. So the first thing is awareness. And
Mhm.
once you're aware that you're abusive brain chatter, and maybe you're aware, let's give an example. You're saying, well, like mine used to say, you're such a bad mother. You're such a bad mother. That was just what would go back into my head. When I finally realized that, it was like, okay, I'm aware. That's my head talking. The next thing that I did was, at that point, I really needed to find a source of belief that wasn't my head. I always say my own thinking couldn't get me out of my own thinking. I needed to find a higher source. And for me, that was spiritual. And I, as a life coach and a spiritual coach, I really believe that is the way out of abusive brain chatter. It has to come from a higher self, a higher voice, a higher God, a higher Buddha. I don't care what you call it. It has to be a source within you that you can rely on to give you good feedback. So the second is believe. So it's awareness and then believe. And that's believe that inside of you, there is a voice that loves you and wants you to feel good about yourself. And then the next part is the C, and the C is to challenge your core beliefs. Core beliefs are really what our abusive brain chatter, that's where it gets its ammunition, right? The core beliefs, if you believe you're not good enough, oh boy, are you going to just let your brain chatter go? It's going to just take off and run with that, right? So in this example I gave you, it would be, wow, you're such a terrible mother. The kids are going to turn out terrible, but whatever it is that starts chattering, or you're so stupid, you're never going to find a good job. Let's do that. You're never going to find a good job. You should just stay at the job you have, because God forbid you should try going out there and finding another job. That's kind of the chatter that goes on. So you're kind of aware of that. And then you go, wait a minute. You kind of tune in and you go, wow, that isn't loving. That doesn't fit with my beliefs about what a loving person I want to be. I want to be loving to myself. So I kind of tune into myself and I say, okay, I don't want to believe this. This doesn't feel good. And I wait for some guidance. And the guidance is usually, yeah, this isn't good. You are loved, you are beautiful, you are wonderful, whatever it is, the message that I needed to hear. And then the third part of it, the challenge your core beliefs, would be just exactly what it sounds like. You go, wait a minute, is that really true that I'm never going to find another job? Is that really true that I'm not a good employee? Is that really true that I'm a bad mother? You actually challenge it, and you have to say, that's not true. No, that's not true. Once you challenge it, you can start changing it. At that point, you can say, I'm not a bad mother. I make sure my kids get to school every day. I am a good mother. And if I'm not, I want to learn to be better. You start coming from more of a loving place. And that's the whole idea, is to not let that brain chatter take over.
What happens to your clients, especially people who are trying to do this on their own, and they kind of get stuck? Probably, I would think the awareness is kind of tough sometimes if you're just not paying attention much, like most of us don't, to what you're thinking, especially since we talk so much in our head, which is 10 times more or more than what we normally say out loud. Not only do we maybe get stuck on awareness, but if we're past that and we get to the challenging beliefs and you say, I am bad at this, I am stupid, I am this, I am that, I believe that. And that's a core belief. How do you get people beyond that? How can they help themselves get beyond that? You have anything that you can help people with that?
Well, that's a really good point, Carol, because the idea is that if you can't get past that point, if you can't challenge your core beliefs on your own, you need to get help. You need to get whatever kind of help is available to you. You either need to get counseling, you need to get coaching, you need to get spiritual teachings. If you have addictions, I recommend 12-step programs, a sponsor, anybody who's going to take you into your brain. I always say the brain is a terrible place to go in alone, right? We don't go in there alone, especially if it's abusive. Just like okay, so just like if you were being battered, if you're a battered woman or man, you would get yourself to a shelter and you would get some help, and you would get somebody giving you clear thinking. No, this isn't right. This isn't okay. It isn't okay to be talked to this way. It isn't okay to be hurt this way. It isn't okay to be hit or beat or whatever. This isn't okay. And sometimes it takes somebody else to go there and help you do that. And so that's why, especially the suicidal, especially if you have suicidal ideations and it's telling you that you're a terrible person and that people would be better off without you, get help. I had to do that. That's what I did. I became aware that I was at my wit's end. I was at my bottom when I was 42. And it just got to be so much that I could no longer breathe. I was asthmatic and I was just puffing on I just couldn't breathe. It was just telling me such awful stuff. And I literally got on my knees. I'm not a religious person or anything, but I got on my knees and I just knew, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm not willing to do this anymore. I need help. And I got help. So I'm not saying you can do it alone. And I'm glad you raised that point. What I am saying is that if you find yourself with abusive brain chatter that you can't control, go get help.
I know that as a certified spiritual coach, as I am, that you speak more. Well, I don't know if all your clients are more spiritually leaning, so to speak, and that you can help them this way. Because when you talk about a belief, some people have zero.
Yeah.
Or at least they say they have zero. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are totally of zero. How do you work with people and interact with people on the brain chatter issue in the spiritual way if they maybe don't have that kind of background? Because you had said you weren't that religious, but maybe you were more spiritual.
Yes. Oh, what a great question. So yes, well, as you know, too, a lot of the people that you come to me for life coaching will say something like, well, no, I don't believe in God. Either they had some bad religious experience or they just have never learned how to do it. And the way we do it is we do it very gently. I guide them into themselves. I have a process where, we just quiet the mind, quiet the body. And I just take them on a journey to find their own spiritual voice or spirit guide. And sometimes I'll even start with that. Okay, so if you don't believe in God, or if you don't believe in some higher being, how about we find a guide, some kind of a guide to guide you? Everybody has a higher voice and everybody can find a guide. So sometimes I'll just take them on a journey, and the guides have been wonderful. I had one woman who said she couldn't find God. She couldn't find anything. She couldn't find a spiritual connection, but she could visualize Glinda coming down, the witch. She said, well,
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, she did. She said, I can't visualize anything spiritual, but it makes me feel good to think of Glinda coming down and sitting on my shoulder. So that's okay. That's what her guide was. I had another woman whose guide was Sacagawea. She just, when we went on our spiritual journey, that's who spoke to her.
I had one who did Alvin and the Chipmunks. I almost started dying. I was laughing so hard.
Exactly.
I was like, really? It's not even a real person. Okay.
No, and it doesn't, just like you said, it doesn't have to be. I think a lot of times people have had this punishing God in mind, so they don't want to go to the spiritual place. But what I always say is, if you're still hearing brain chatter and if the messages you're getting are negative, you haven't found it yet. You haven't found your spiritual voice, because the spiritual voice is all love, all acceptance. That's what spirit is. It's the flow, it's the love, it's the energy that is all healing. So, if you go in and you say, well, you go into your guide and your guide says, well, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't try out that job or whatever. You haven't hit your guide, because your guide is going to be loving. And I think, the other thing is that a real important thing to know about abusive brain chatter is that it's there to protect you. It's kind of weird, isn't it?
I've come across that. Every time it's a negative thing, it's always, I'm just trying to caution you. I'm just trying to help you. I'm just trying. And it's like, If you just say, thank you, I hear you, then it won't be so loud in your head anymore. It just wants to make sure that you're aware. And if you try and ignore it or push it aside, that's when it gets louder and louder and louder. Sounds like, to at least most of the time in my group, and my clients.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I always say it's like a little kid pulling at your apron strings, mommy. If you don't look down and say, okay, I hear you, but I got this. Don't worry. Mom's in charge. And that's usually what happens when you become aware and you give your abusive brain chatter a voice. And then you allow the other part of yourself to speak. You become aware that, oh, this is just a scared place. It doesn't want me to go apply for another job because it doesn't want me to fail. It absolutely is happier keeping me stuck than risking me failing. But what it needs to know is, wait a minute, there's an adult in charge now. There's someone else in charge who wants to succeed. And so it doesn't have to hold you back anymore.
And it looks at the worst case scenario rather than the best case scenario, or even, but more likely will happen is somewhere in the middle between the worst and the best.
Right. Exactly.
I know that you like to say something about helping people get a more authentic life and to live a more authentic life. So how do you think that calming brain chatter helps people? You've kind of gone into some of this, but maybe if you say it in a different way, you might get through to some people. How do you think that calming brain chatter will help people reclaim their life?
Well, I can tell you how it helped me reclaim mine. You're not going to take a chance if your brain is telling you that you're not good enough, or that you can't do something, or that why even try. And a lot of times in life coaching, I'm sure you see this, is, a client will come in and they'll have some goals and they'll want to set those goals. They'll be just like raring to go. I really want to write that book, or I want to change my job. I really want to do this. And you go terrific and you set up some goals, and they start, the first week, the second week, they start moving towards those goals. But you see, after about maybe 2 or 3 weeks, that's when that brain chatter starts coming up and starts telling them, no, that's just a pipe dream. You always quit. You're never going to finish this. So why don't you just quit? That's when it starts happening. So it's really, really important to be able to give it the space that it needs to speak.
I'm going to throw a curve at you, because it just occurred to me that the law of attraction really works in this, because the more negative stuff you say, the more negative stuff comes up, and the more it proves to you that you are stupid or unattractive or whatever. So therefore you go, well, see, of course I am. I have proof.
Yeah.
And so the law of attraction really plays in there when you are cycling that way. And I hadn't really thought of it in relation to abusive brain chatter before, but yeah, I've seen that in many different ways. So it seems like that's kind of, law of attraction kind of fits into a lot of the different shows that I do, because the more that you think of the positive and think of the possibilities that are wonderful instead of, oh my God, this is awful, the more likely you are to have that law of attraction kick in. Do you find that that's true, that I'm on the right track here?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Wherever you put your focus, if you focus on the negative is going to get larger. It's almost like a magnifying glass. So I love this. And I'm glad you brought this up, because, I talk about, in my relationship coaching, I talk about the golden nugget, and that instead of focusing on the negative with your partner, you focused on the golden nugget for the week. What are their golden nuggets? And it's the same with ourselves. I always start my clients off with gratitudes. That's the first thing. If I hear a client with abusive brain chatter, okay, so this week we're going to do 5 gratitudes every day, or 3 times a week, or you're going to send me your gratitude list, because when you're in gratitude, you can't possibly be in negative thinking. So it's just exactly like you said, it's turning that focus to, wow, I am so blessed. I really live in a great place, and I do have a good job, and my paycheck comes in pretty regular. And, whatever it is, we can always find something to be grateful for. So I have people pivot right to that new perspective, and then looking for the golden nugget, the wins. I call it the wins. So, what wins did I have this week? So my gratitudes are this, and my wins were this. And that's really powerful, to mark your wins is really, it produces dopamine. You know, when you set a goal and you achieve goals, they found that you actually produce dopamine. That's why I like people to set really small goals, because I'd rather have you have the win than say to yourself, oh, I didn't make the goal. Well, you know, if you're going to set a goal, let's make it really realistic. And so say meditation, which I wholeheartedly believe in. And a lot of my clients come to me and they say, I don't know how to meditate, or I can't make time for it, or whatever it is. So when we set our goals and I say, so this week, how about if we set our goals, how many meditations would you like to do this week? And they go, well, I'll do 7, because they get all excited. I don't think that's really that's not gonna get you there, because you start from 0 to 7. How about if we just do 2 this week? Okay, I can do 2. All right. So what days are you going to meditate? Well, I'm going to meditate Tuesday and Thursday. Okay. How long are you going to meditate? Well, I'll meditate for half hour.
Yeah, I know. That's my first thought is, no, you can't sit there.
Exactly. Let's rethink that. How about 2 minutes? They show that just 2 minutes has an effect on you as a positive effect. So how about if 2 minutes twice a week and you do the gratitudes? Like you said, that it's just really relearning how to look at things differently.
And I have a show totally on meditating, and I try and tell people you don't have to sit there and try to quiet your mind. That's not the only way to do it. You can do it while you're washing dishes. If it's anything repetitive, you can do it. Pay attention to your breath, pay attention to the water, be in the now. You know, it's like you're gardening, you're jogging, you're whatever you're doing. There is times when you're alone that you can do that. Try not to do it when somebody's talking to you and you're supposed to be listening, because you'll be paying attention to your breath and you go, what'd you say? But other than that, there's a lot of times that you can do meditating. And I always forget that too, because I get so busy and all of a sudden it's like, didn't meditate. Okay, how am I going to do that? So I think that it's a really good thing to mention to people too.
Yeah, I meditate in the bathtub. I have a bathtub and I meditate in the shower. It's when I do it, and I do it just on a daily basis, and that warm water, and it just works for me.
Well, and everybody has a different time. I know somebody who does it while they're driving, and it was like, really? Just no, it's fine, because I'm so in the present moment. I don't like close my eyes, obviously, but just think I drive and it's like I'm in the zone. And so I can do it. I just pay attention to my breath and I'm aware of everything around me. I said, well, you're probably in better shape than normal people who are just regularly driving, because if you're staying in the now, you're totally ready for whatever happens.
Exactly.
It was an interesting point of view that she had on that one. Before we wrap up, I do want to ask you the question that I normally ask my guests. And that one is, what 3 things do you want people to take away from the show to get them started or to continue on their road to calming their brain chatter? Because they may already be paying attention and maybe doing something or aware, at least a little bit.
Yeah. So those ABCs, remember the ABCs. Yeah. Be aware that it's not okay. I think what happens, some people are self-deprecating and they think it's okay. It's really not okay. You're emotionally abusing your soul. You've got this beautiful soul you were given in life, and your family and parents and school and peers and everybody, your soul starts to get crushed as you grow up. And they don't mean to, but it just does. And when you start to get older, your soul then is yours. It's yours to take back. And every time you practice loving kindness, you're helping to grow your soul. So be aware that when you say negative things to yourself, you have a choice. You don't have to. It's soul crushing. That's the first thing. Then start to find that beautiful voice in you, the one that says those, if it takes a walk in nature, but the one voice that comes to you and tells you it gives you the direction, gives your soul the direction. And then again, that what I said, challenges core beliefs. It isn't true. We don't live in black and whites where we're all bad and all good. There's certainly things that we can change, but we're not all bad and we're not all good. So challenge it and let it speak. If it needs to speak, let it speak and let it know that you are in charge now. My big takeaway is, don't live like that. You don't have to. Get help. Don't be your own emotional abuser.
And you deserve better.
Yeah.
That's the D, ABCD. You deserve better.
Well, thank you. I think I'm going to add that.
I hadn't even thought of that. I mean, for me, it's almost like when people aren't spiritual, I try and tell them, try and be your own best friend. Would you say that to somebody you love with all your heart? What are you saying? Would you say what you say to yourself to that other person? You wouldn't have that other person in your life very long.
Right.
Why do you stick around yourself? It's like you were saying, going to a shelter. You can't go to a shelter to get away from yourself. You're still going to bring yourself with you.
Right.
Your abuser comes with you. So that's why you need to ask for help if you can't help it yourself, with someone who'll listen to you, like a coach or a therapist or someone. My main thing that I tell people, like I said, is, would you say that to your own best friend? Did you hear what you just said?
Yeah.
Would you say that to your best friend or your loved one? And it depends. Sometimes we have to be a little more critical of someone to wake them up and say something like, hey, did you hear what you said? You said this. That wasn't very kind.
Yeah.
Maybe you say that, but that's different from saying you were nasty and awful. I don't think you're worth it. You don't say that necessarily to your child. Well, some people horribly do, but you try not to. If you say you're a good mother or a good father, you want to help them, but you don't want to rip them apart. Even in Toastmasters, it's pretty funny because when we evaluate people, I'm learning how to rethink my brain by being in Toastmasters, because we always say to them, this is what you did well. These are the things you can improve. And maybe if you challenge yourself, you could do one more thing, but overall, and then you say something nice again.
Mm-hmm.
So you do that sandwich thing. So it's really interesting because I used to always just say negative things when I used to teach singing. And I would say all the negative things. It's like, well, to improve, this is what you do to improve. And one person finally said, I'm working so hard. And I said, I know you are. And he goes, he really wasn't very good. He couldn't sing on key very well. So it was a really big issue, but he was a voiceover artist and he wanted to be able to sing as well. He was enunciating better and doing certain things better. And he says, you never say anything positive. And I really feel like you're just ripping me down all the time. And I thought, oh my God, I wonder if I do that to myself too. And it's like, I'm so sorry. He says, just one good thing for every 10 bad things even would be helpful for me. And that was a long time ago. And I just thought, wow, that's a really good lesson. And I should stop doing that.
Yeah.
But it takes somebody to point out to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially as parents too. We do that as parents a lot of times, trying to improve our children. You know, we say these things because we love them and we want them to improve, but we don't realize that we're breaking them down rather than building them up. And you know, our inner child, or whatever you want to call it, is the same thing. And then the last thing I just wanted to say is have a sense of humor about it. I mean, I call it the tornado head, and I just laugh because it's like, if you start thinking your head's going and you start picking up more things and you end up way off track, just laugh and go, oop, there goes tornado head again. And just don't go there. Just uncurl that tornado.
You should probably patent that word or trademark it.
Yes.
I haven't heard it before. Did you get it from somebody else? No,
it's what I saw, what I would watch my clients do. And I'd say, you're
going in circles.
Going in circles. Pretty soon I'm expecting, the Wicked Witch of the West to come by and say, and your little dog too, right? Just so much. Surrender.
And they just want to go home, right?
Right, exactly.
I did want to mention, I hear that you have an upcoming workshop on aging coming up. You want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. One of the things that I think happens when we age is that our abusive brain chatter gets really, really loud if we haven't worked out our ageism. I think for a lot of us, we have an inner ageist. I'm reading a great book on that, and that we don't value aging. Instead, we're afraid of it, or we don't like the way we look, our wrinkles and our faces and all of those things in our body. And so I'm creating a workshop for women who want to learn to do soul work around aging, because aging is about completing the work of your soul. That means you have to talk to yourself lovingly. You have to look in the mirror. And if you see your mother in the mirror or your grandmother, you have to say, hi, grandma. You have to learn to talk to yourself lovingly, especially in old age, because you will kill your soul. And we need our soul as we're starting to transition out. We become beautiful people when we enlarge our soul. So I am doing a workshop on that. I will have information about that up on my website if anybody's interested in that.
Is that how they sign up too, through the website?
Yes, when I get it up, it will be up in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
It's going to be on Zoom. I think it's really going to be very powerful.
Great. Well, that'll be in the show notes link for both our websites, mine and my YouTube channel. Do you have a YouTube channel as well?
I do. I think it's Jacquie Elliott. I don't know.
Mine is Carol DeChaine, so that'll make it easy for everybody. And also, again, my website is connect2joy.com, which is connect2joy.com. And Jackie's is Jacquie Elliott, CLC.com. You'll find it in the episode description. So it'll be right there. And you can also, if you know what it is, her name will also be on all the advertising and everything for the podcast. Before we go, you also had mentioned a special offer that you were going to say if people mentioned the podcast, and that had to do with your 4-week program. Could you tell us a little bit more about that as well?
Yes, I have a 4-week program to help jumpstart your spirituality, or it can be a 4-week goal setting program. And my 4-week programs are usually $600, but if you mention the podcast, it'll be $400. It'll include 4 90-minute sessions with me, in addition to some accountability in between. And we're going to just get you from here to there. Just work on one issue that you really want to work through.
That's great. Thanks. If you'd like to know more about life coaching with Jacquie or with me, you can go to our websites. I also do personally intuitive readings, and I do Marconics multidimensional energy work. Either if you want to receive the energy or to become a practitioner, you can reach out to me either by email or through my website. And I'm sure that Jackie's the same way. And I want to thank everyone for listening today. And also especially want to thank my guest, Jacquie Elliott. Thank you, Jacquie. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I've learned a lot too. Even though I knew some on the subject, I learned a lot about the way that you talk about it. So it's been really helpful. So remember the ABCs, be aware, look at your belief and listen to that higher voice rather than the one that's being all the negative, and to challenge your core beliefs. And you can listen again anytime to the show, so that if you want to go more in depth, you can either listen and get some more information that way, because we don't always hear everything that goes by the first time. And then, of course, you can contact Jacquie as well to get more information. Until next week, be courageous and reach higher. And remember, transformation is a journey, not an end destination. So be kind to yourself. Just take one step at a time, get the help you need if you do, and then get out there and find your joy.
Thank you for listening to Connect to Joy. If you love the show, make sure you rate, review, and share this podcast. And subscribe so you never miss an episode. Contact the host, Carol DeChaine, with questions and comments, ideas for future episodes, or if you would like to become a guest. And remember, transformation is a journey and not an end destination. So be kind to yourself, because you are already enough to have the joyful, limitless life that you desire.